Yeah, we're recording, so you can start whenever you want.
Okay.
You need to count it down or anything.
All right. So welcome everyone to the 7th meeting of FY25 for the Milton Community Preservation Committee. Welcome everybody tonight here in person and anybody watching this later. We'll do a call to order. My name is Tom Callahan. I'm the chair of the Community Preservation Committee.
Jenny Russell, Vice Chair and Citizen Representative.
Pete Jackson, Citizen Representative and Fiscal Liaison.
And we're going to have the committee members introduce themselves. Actually, use this.
Pass that around.
Rob Levash, I'm Park Commissioner.
And committee member.
Kathleen O'Donnell, committee member.
Linda Weld, Historic Commissioner.
Good evening. I'm Wendy Garpo, the representative from the Conservation Commission.
Great. Thank you. And that's all the committee members here tonight. So thank you. We have a couple just very quick administrative items and the first one is to set up our next meeting. We do not have a next meeting scheduled. I anticipate the next meeting that we can deal with the long-awaited update to our CPA plan that is going through final edits right now. It'll be ready to view hopefully this weekend. And so I'm thinking an April meeting would be appropriate we don't have any other, I think, pressing business before the committee other than I think it makes sense to probably set up a meeting to approve that plan before we get into the 4th year funding rounds, which will be starting in May, and we'll get into that in a second tonight. So does that make sense? Could it even potentially be an online daytime or meeting? I think we'll have. My plan is to get that out a couple weeks in advance to everybody, have people have a chance to review, and then come together for a discussion and any final edits.
Do we usually meet on Tuesday? Or what night do we usually meet Tuesday?
We've been mostly Tuesdays, is that? Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Tuesday,
we're not
Thursday.
gonna do the 29th. What about the 22nd?
There is something else going on in town in the 28th, the 29th.
The 22nd.
22nd I can't make, as usual.
The 8th?
The 8th?
This is the 8th?
8th is too soon, I think.
8th is too...
15th?
Yeah, that's true. 15th?
15th, yeah.
People want to do a daytime Zoom thing or a evening?
Let's do an evening.
Okay. The evening of the 15th?
Yep,
Okay.
7 p.m.
7 p.m.?
Yep.
Julia, that's good?
Make it a hybrid.
Okay. We can make it a hybrid. I think they have been consistently hybrid. I think the Commonwealth has approved continuation, right? An extension of hybrid meetings.
7.
So, at 7 o'clock, yes. All right, so we have our next meeting scheduled. The next administrative item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from February 6th and February 25th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion second. Any discussion in the minutes? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes are passed. All right. So welcome to the public forum portion of the CPA, the Community Preservation Act. We have a very short presentation that we're going to just run through and then open it up. Really, we want to use this opportunity to hear your questions, your ideas for future funding, your any concerns about community preservation. But let me start with our short presentation here and share my screen. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. Bear with me. That is the wrong screen. Let's try this again here. Great. Great. That's a neat trick. I was practicing that before you all arrived.
You're not running for anything, are you, Tom?
Part of the problem is I never close anything on my computer.
That's all right. We've all been there.
We will get there. There we go. Julia can see the. All right. Over there. Yay. All right. This is who we are.
Yeah,
Oh, sure. Sure. All right. So just a quick history of the CPA as a statewide law. Basically, the Community Preservation Act was passed in the year 2000, signed into law by Governor Paul Cellucci, and it essentially is an enabling act. It allows communities to put a ballot question in front of their voters, and that's the only way CPA can be passed is through a referendum in a local community. And that ballot question can call for a surcharge on property taxes of up to 3%. Communities can decide any level up to 3%, but no more than 3%. For the purposes of raising funds for three uses of what is called community housing, more commonly referred to as affordable housing. And we'll explain these categories in a minute. Open space and recreation, which is a combined category that includes preserving land for passive open space, but also active recreation to improvements, and historic preservation. So those are the three legs of the CPA stool, if you will. This is just a graphic from the Community Preservation Coalition's website. Full disclosure, I am the steering committee chair of that statewide coalition and have been on the steering committee since the beginning in the year 2000. 200 communities now, as of this year, have passed CPA, an incredible success story. Over 70% of Massachusetts residents live in a CPA community now. So it's 57% of communities have adopted it, but a lot of cities, including Boston and other larger communities, have adopted it now. So over 70% of residents live in the CPA communities. In total, since the year 2000, it's raised $3.4 billion, has preserved 37,000 acres of open space. It's funded 4,000 outdoor recreation projects. It's created 13,000 housing units and supported another 19,000 housing units, and has funded over 7,600 historic preservation projects. So it's an incredible track record of success that started 25 years ago now, and we are proud to have it here in Milton and proud that the voters supported it. So what has Milton done? Milton adopted it, as many people know, in the year 2020. So it took us a little longer than some of us had hoped maybe to adopt it, but we have adopted with 63% of voters in November of 2020 voting to adopt a 1% surcharge on property taxes here in Milton to raise money for the CPA fund. I should say the state matches that money every year. It's a match that varies from year to year. It's been as high in the early years as 100% match. In more recent years, it fluctuates 15, 20, 25, 30%. It's been in that range, but it has to do with a couple of state sources of the match money that can fluctuate from year to year, but there's always been a state match, and there always will be some level of a state match that's part of the statute. So in the 3 years of funding that we've had, and this combines the 2 years that have already been appropriated by town meeting, and then of course we have a third year going to town meeting. So in the May town meeting, this incorporates that funding, but that's subject, that third year of course is subject to town meeting approval at our May town meeting. So if approved by town meeting, these will be the totals, a total of $3.8 million in our 3 years of funding. And that's how it breaks out. The lion's share, I think it's 41.6%, going to open space recreation category, 1.6 million, 1.2 million to affordable housing, and just over 1 million to historic preservation. The committee, our committee, I think all 3 years, different people have been striving to have relatively equal funding, not exactly equal because we have different needs in town and different levels of projects, but we try to treat all categories fairly and try to have the funding, some robust funding go to each of the 3 categories. So that's the track record here in Milton. This is a chart that's on the Community Preservation Coalition's website, and this is, I think, it's in our CPA plan in past years. It will be in our future CPA plans. It's really, I think, a helpful at-a-glance look at what CPA can fund and cannot fund. It basically breaks it down by category and uses the verbs, the key CPA verbs. It can acquire, it can create in most cases, except for historic preservation, which is kind of obvious. We can't create history. Well, we can, but it's fundable later. It's definitely can be used to preserve, rehabilitate, and restore. There's a few asterisks there if acquired with CPA funds. Both in the community housing and open space categories. And for the most part, cannot be used to support programs or ongoing, there's ongoing maintenance and that type of stuff. The common open space example or recreation example is one of the projects we funded, and it's near to my house, so I'll just use it, is there'll be new dugouts at Kelly Field, both in the baseball and softball fields. We can do capital improvements like Kelly Field new dugouts. We cannot mow the grass at Kelly Field. We cannot maintain and do basic maintenance. So that's a key distinction that sometimes people don't fully appreciate when they're first learning about CPA. So we can come back to this if there's questions, but that's a quick overview of that. And then funding eligibility applications are open. We decided not to wait till a certain day certain. We opened them, I think, a couple weeks ago on the website. But here are the key deadlines. The eligibility applications are due on May 30th. This is very consistent. It's the same last Friday in May that we set last year. It's a different date, of course, but it's May 30th. And again, the same last Friday in September would be if your eligibility application is accepted for a second round of the full funding application, that full funding application will be due on September 26th. So that's the key dates to keep in mind if you're thinking of a CPA project, or if you know of folks that are thinking of a CPA project. So that is my presentation, and I don't know if Pete or Jenny, you want to add anything, or any members of the committee want to add, but we want to use most of the time tonight to hear from you.
No, that was great.
Yep.
The only thing I might add is that what you didn't mention is that the committee is required to fund 10% in each category. So the history in Milton is that we certainly have well met that requirement, but it is in the statute. So each
10, 10, 10. Yep.
each category gets some attention.
Yep. And the remaining 70%, 5%, so it's good to go through that. 10% for affordable housing, 10% for open space recreation, 10% for historic preservation. 5% can be used for administrative expenses. In Milton, we've managed to spend well below 5% for our administrative expenses, but that we do have that flexibility. And then the remaining 65 or 70% this can be spent on any of the three uses. So, and that can fluctuate and does fluctuate year to year. There are scenarios you could foresee where you could spend 80% of your money in one category 1 year, but you could flip that the next year and fund other categories too. So we have not taken that approach as of today,
No.
and really have tried to equalize the funding amounts.
The only other thing I might add is that word is out, so to speak. So with each subsequent cycle that we've had, it has almost doubled in terms of the number of applications that we have received. So it's great that the word is out, but the competition then goes up.
Right. So bring your best game.
Andy did mention that typically on a given year, it's about $1 million that the committee has. Our first year, we had $2 million because it was 2 years. Then that's why it's around 3.
It was 1.7 or so, but yeah.
Something like that.
Yep.
But it's typically around $1 million. So next year, $1 million will be available.
Just for clarity, is
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, please.
So then you've got the 3 different categories, so the million is the total.
Is a total, and what we've always said, we try to just
Close
be
it up.
fair as a committee to try to keep it a third. Somewhere, we try to be fair so that if we get applications from all these 3 categories, we look at all of them and we weigh them out, and oftentimes we balance the applications to fund as many people as we can. Was this the first year that we actually said that we actually couldn't fund? Well, maybe the
We
year
said no.
before, too. We've said no before.
The first year we were able to fund
We
every
were
application,
able to fund everybody.
but the last 2 years we've said no to a relatively small group of applicants, but we did have to say no.
But it also meant that last year we had to, some people that requested, we had to lower.
Yes. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons for the eligibility round. For us to help make sure we're dealing with eligible applicants, that somebody's not proposing something that would not be fit with the CPA statute and therefore is ineligible for funding. So that's a basic screen that we use. But the other way we've used the eligibility round is to level set for applicants of we just got $5 million, which I think was the real number,
Last year, yeah.
in eligibility applications with only $1 million to give out. So we used that round to educate the applicants that was the reality and that we were going to have some tough decisions and ask people to sharpen their pencils, which a number of applications were able to do, and appreciated that. So, Pete, did you want to add anything?
I think the only other thing is on the schedule. Projects get the budget, all the projects that we put in get approved at town meeting in May, but the money actually becomes available July 1st in the upcoming fiscal year. So people are thinking of projects now, remember it won't be till the following July that money would actually become available.
July 26th would be the next.
July 26th would be, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you apply for May. So.
Yeah, because the warrant article that's going to town meeting will be the 3rd year of funding in the May 2025 town meeting. So, all right. So yes.
Are there projects already slated in the timeline of work to come in the spring? Are there projects already teed up to go?
Yes, we have a warrant article
Yes.
that will be on the May town meeting warrant with
13
projects that are.
Oh,
Yeah. So the question, I'm sorry, thank you, Julia. The question is, are there projects teed up and ready to go? Is that accurate? So yes, the FY25 funding will go to town meeting for the approval, 13 different projects for a total of about $1.1 million. So that will be on the warrant in town meeting. If town meeting approves that, as Pete said, July 1, those projects are eligible to start drawing down that money in July 1. Kathleen?
We also have projects that were approved at last year's town meeting that will be undergoing this spring.
Yeah.
Awesome. I've been
So-
great CPA since it started. I was so grateful that Milton joined us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So why don't we open it up to comments? We want to hear your ideas. This is, there's no, if you have complaints, if you have comments, if you have suggestions, if you have a future project, we want to hear about it. This is tonight to really solicit ideas. We want to also be, as members of the committee, we want to be thinking, we have to be thinking year to year and short term in some ways because projects come at us. We also want to be thinking long term, and if there's, we have funded over the first 3 years a number of study projects that are looking at the Neponset Estuary, for instance, Pine Tree Brook Trail, which would connect, the trail from the Neponset River all the way to the Ulen Rink. So those would be, if they came together, those would be long-term, bigger ticket items. We have to be thinking short-term and long-term with all of this. So, all right. So why don't we open it up for comments? Who would like to be first?
Is this hybrid?
Right.
Is this meeting hybrid? We have
Yes.
one?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some people online.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
So how do we take comments from online?
Yeah, just be aware of people online who might want to ask a question.
So my name is Brian Walsh, and I'm the chair of the Fire Station Building Committee. And we're rebuilding all 3 fire stations in Milton. We've completed one, the headquarters, which is not far from here. And,
Yeah.
oh, it's not? I'm sorry. Hello?
Yeah, it's good. Speak right into it.
So my name is Brian Walsh, and I chair the Fire Station Building Committee. We're rebuilding all 3 fire stations in Milton. 2 of them are much more than 100 years old. And the newest one, which is Engine 2, it's in East Milton Square. It was built, it came on board about 1950. It was the second actual building, fire station building on that same site. So compared to the other 2, it's kind of new. That's the good news. The bad news is it definitely has to be replaced because just a few years after it was completed, the state decided to sink the expressway, which dramatically changed the streets and the paths around that fire station. And 75% of the district it covers are on the, let's call it the Milton side of the expressway. And the fire engine loses a minute and a half, almost regularly, going from the fire station over to the East Milton Post Office, which, if you can visualize it, it's a line of sight. It's not that far. And that's a real problem for fire service because the national standard is 90% of your district should be covered within 4 minutes or less. Losing a minute and a half up front is a problem. So in any event, that's the newest station. We had a new location. We were lucky enough. We put out bids. We did find a new location. It's actually right next to the rectory at St. Agatha's. So if you can visualize this, St. Agatha's Church, the school, and the rectory. And we are just about to start that project. And that will be our second project. We completed the headquarters, and we're going to start that. With a little luck, there'll be groundbreaking in April. That'll take a little bit, around a year, 13 months to complete. We had an interesting funding formula, interesting good. It was legislation that was passed by the town that's funding it. It's basically using declining debt from the building of the 6 schools and the Milton Library. So as that debt comes off, it's reserved so it can fund the fire stations. The bad news for us is we were going to go out and apologize for the background, but it gives you perspective and will help me understand if this is a match. The bad news for us is we were going to go out and actually put out for bid all 3 fire stations that all need to be worked at once with the anticipation that we would get a much better price because it would be a much larger project for a firm to undertake with a commitment. Unfortunately, we were ready to go out for bid just as COVID hit. And COVID dramatically changed the whole world of funding and the costs. And so what we learned quickly was a larger project was not better because it would be stretched out over a number of years, and contractors worrying about not only the high rise of cost of materials, they had no idea when that might come down or if it would come down post-COVID. It was quite an impact. So what we did was we put out the headquarters and we got it built, but it was much more expensive than our original hope and plan. We put out the Engine 2 St. Agnes, I refer to it as the St. Agnes project, but I can't help myself. I went to that elementary school there. In any event, that project cost has come in really good. Okay, it's slightly higher than our original thinking, but significantly less increase compared to the headquarters. When we did the headquarters, we were too late to apply for and get some community preservation funds to help us. We did preserve things like the slate roof and some other things on the old building, but we're too late in the process. So I guess in a perfect world, we'd like to be able to start building the Atherton Street Station about a year, maybe a year and a half from now. The impediments to starting, the biggest impediment is funding. That funding formula I talked about, which it's had us slow down because not only did the costs go up, but we had to do a lot of short-term borrowing, and the cost to borrow money went up quite a bit. So that unfortunately hesitate us. But the Atherton Street Station that's left, and this is what really focuses now to the community preservation, it's actually a beautiful rock building. I don't know if any of you can visualize it or have seen it.
Yeah.
And that was our full intention. In fact, we worked with the Milton Historic Society when we started this whole project, which is some 7 years ago. And we had every intention and hope that we could preserve that building. It has some interesting challenges, but our thinking was it should be a really good match to get some help from the Community Preservation Act. I've already learned a lot tonight here in terms of the amount of money you have to be able to put out. My best guess is preserving that building and rebuilding it, you got to bring an awful lot up to speed. Is probably a $9 million, $10 million project. We do not have enough money left in the funding formula we have, so we would look for help. However, the flip side of that is there's enough room on that property, and I'm only saying this as an education. I'm not saying this to try to create any fear or loathing or threats. There's enough room on that property. We could build a new fire engine right behind it, the current building, and then just implode the building. That would be significantly cheaper. Talking the tune of $2 or $3 million. So
Wait, so you're saying $2 to $3 million to build a new one and $9 million?
No, $2 to $3 million cheaper. So my guess would be about a $6 or $7 million project. And correct. And again, we don't want to do that, right? Because it's a beautiful.
But I had a few questions.
Yeah.
Because I do a lot of historic preservation projects.
Well, we might want to rank you in for some consulting.
Well, so even though I think it would be eligible, right? If you're looking for new funding, I think one of the biggest problems when you came up the first time was that the funding was secured.
It
Yeah,
was
there-
supplanting.
It was
Supplanting.
Yeah, there's two, right. And Kathleen, you want to explain
Yeah.
supplanting?
Well, so supplanting, if you already have a municipal budget, I think
Well, no, this is
So
being
online's gotta
Milton
get
Cable,
used.
so.
I think they still can. I'm just saying that if you already have a municipal budget and you have, $10 million for the fire station, you've already voted that money for a project, you cannot put CPA money into it because what you're doing is supplanting the original funding, and that's not allowed. And so that's what happened with the last one, because the budget for the central had already been approved by the town, and you couldn't pop money.
And our late was a little ask.
Yeah.
Our ask was a little late.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So that one we couldn't do because you had already voted the money. The town had already voted the money.
That's not the situation now.
But now for the Atherton, you haven't. So this is a great time to start to have that chat.
But I will say, is that project on the National Registry? Do you know?
That building.
That building, is it on the National Registry?
It's on the state register.
That's a great question. So if it should be on, if it's on like a national registry, so you could ask your architect, you could get state funding and you could also get federal funding. And state funding is almost up to 20, you can almost get a third of funding. It takes many rounds. I've done it on a bunch of theaters that we've done, historic preservation projects. I'm doing one right now in New Bedford, Massachusetts. So, but you can get probably about a third of that to preserve. Really? But I would start looking now, right? So I think you could probably get that funding. This could be a small piece of that funding, right? But the bigger piece of the pie would be from the state or federal funding for it. So I hope that helps.
That helped me. If I can have an additional clarification. One of the things that's confusing is when we first got budgeted for $34.2 million. And we thought when we did that budget that it was going to do all three stations. And as I mentioned, COVID hit, dramatically increased the price. And also, we knew the town would have to do some short-term borrowing until the debt reduction accelerated enough so it could, there's a special purpose stabilization fund that comes from those two projects. And we knew we'd have to short-term borrow, and then the price of short-term borrowing up. And so there was a total dollar value that was passed in the special purpose legislation that would have allowed us to go back and ask for more and easily cover what we needed in terms of total. But that's no longer true because the funding formula is, it provides a certain amount of, how can I explain this clear? We estimated we'd have over 50 million originally. Well, that 50 million now looks like it's probably only going to be able to fund 35 or 36 million, and we already took 34. So we have, it's not a funded project now. To start it, we would have to go back to the town in some way, shape, or form, get money. Things like my trying to convince the select board to sell the old East Milton station and put that money which makes a lot of sense to me, but there's a lot of needs and demands for money in the town that makes sense as well. So anyway, I'm glad to hear that. I would say that we're not in that same position.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not.
But you want to be planning.
Yeah,
ASAP.
Right.
honestly, that's why when I saw this advertised, that's why I came tonight, because we got time. We would, even if there was a checkbook ready, we'd be about a year before we take this on, because the way we also orchestrated having a project manager and a contractor, we wanted to just finish engine 2 before we took on Atherton Street. So anyway, sorry to manipulate the time.
No, that's very helpful, Brian. It's a helpful update. I know we've talked informally, but I think that's a great update for the committee. We also, I'm not saying this in terms of this project, but we also, our last meeting, we had, keep it out there actually, because where am I? We had Stuart Saganor from the Community Preservation Coalition in to talk to us about bonding CPA money. And that is a possibility. That's not something we've done. It's something many, many towns, however, have, which you can bond, you can float a bond based on the future revenue stream of CPA. So that is something that down the road, we can take a look at for specifically for larger projects, obviously. So other, sure, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. The other point I want to make was, obviously I'm a little biased to our fire station project, right? There's a lot of other needs that meet your requirements.
Yep.
But when I have the opportunities and when we apply, I like to remind certainly this committee and others that this Community Preservation Act to get passed by the town went before the town and failed. It did not pass its first vote.
In 2012. Yeah.
And I believe personally, one of the big reasons for its success is we started making an example, the select board did and we did, that one of the things it could help with was saving, as we knew we were going to do the fire station, saving some of the old buildings. So
Yeah, no, absolutely.
and I'd really like to give you an opportunity to do that.
Well, that's a good segue to somebody who has her hand raised. So Carolyn Cahill co-chaired the campaign that got it passed in 2020. So Carolyn,
Yay, well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Do I hold this down?
Yeah.
Done. No, I think the CPA funds is incredible. I'm so happy that Milton has adopted this. And Brian, you're 100% right. That was one of the things we talked about, was being able to use funding to hopefully help our fire stations. I'm here to just ask a little bit about the recreational piece of the funding. And having worked on the campaign, I do not recall this, but I know CPA is helping to fund a master plan for our fields and parks to get a better sense of where we need improvement. We need a lot of improvement. We know that's going to cost money. Seeing that application deadline for 2026 is coming up shortly, how does the process work if we know we're going to need funds to help improve our fields, but we don't have exactly what we need in place yet? Are you still able to apply and table funding for future use?
So, I mean, I don't like the phrase table funding, but I do like the phrase, we build in flexibility, right? So Kathleen helped me, but the typical grant agreements that we have signed with, with applicants are 3 years, Kathleen?
Yes, 3 years.
So we give applicants 3 years to use the money. And so we do not expect every project on July 1st of their funding year is going to be able to spend all the money. I mean, that would be unrealistic. And we understand that the types of projects we're funding, some of them have long pipelines. You know, Brian just talked about a 7-year pipeline for the fire station building projects. My background's in housing. Housing has an extraordinarily long pipeline. So yes, we do build in that flexibility. So if the project looks, we don't want to fund things on spec, totally. We want to have some high degree of confidence, and I'll ask committee members to correct me if I say anything wrong here, but high degree of confidence that it's going forward, but it doesn't have to be shovel ready July 1st, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think in the past, I think we've looked at more planning projects, or if things were kind of half-cooked, people come with us with an idea. I've said, hey, let's study that. Let's throw a little bit of money at this, study it, and plan it. So that's why, for forever now, I've been looking and saying, hey, our fields are a mess. We really need to fix our fields. And our youth sports are all siloed, and they're all doing their own thing. So last year, that's when I applied from the Parks and Rec, and also got all of our youth sports to donate. We got, I think it was close to $40,000. So almost half the money came from youth sports. 12,000 came from Milton Town Park and Recs, and the rest of the money came from CPA. It's probably around 30 something. So that money, that $85,000, will be put to town meeting this May, and we're going to start that project in July 1. So that project will probably last 9 months to a year.
Right. I guess my thinking is, to repair, replace one grass field is probably going to cost what is the allowance for open space.
Yeah.
So we have multiple fields, and my thinking is if you could start to put money aside so that when it does come time that we are able to kind of get a full picture of everything, we've at least started to set money aside. And that brings me back to kind of, Tom, what you were talking about with the bonding. Can you just chat a little more about what that looks like?
Yeah, we can work with the town treasurer. As a matter of fact, at this presentation, at this meeting, I was talking with the town administrator and the town treasurer and the town accountant. We're all there and participating in that. So we would work in concert with the town treasurer's regularly of floating bonds, maybe attaching CPA to one of the bonds they float, and really. Yeah, we wouldn't want to dedicate the entire revenue stream because that would mean no funding for ongoing projects. We'd be just paying debt service, but many towns have floated. And I think one of the surprising things that we learned in that is the size of these bond issuances. They've really varied. They're not all like $4 million projects, and that there was a big variance in the size of the projects that were funded. Of course, obviously, there's difference in town size. There's difference in revenue streams. So Milton is kind of probably middle of the pack in having about $1 million to play with every year. But
well, it's because our tax, we only do a 1%.
Right.
Some other towns with 3%, you have a lot more funding available.
Yeah.
Plus, they get more
Matching.
Well, yeah.
Right.
They get a better match.
But then there's a bunch of towns in other parts of the state, central and western Mass, that with the values are not. So they might have a 2%, 1%, 2%, 3% surcharge, but they are collecting less revenue because Milton's values are much higher. So.
And I do just want to say, and I know other people want to chat, and there are a lot of needs that our town has right now. You can increase that 1%. Right? The town would vote on that to increase that 1%. Yep. And at any point in time, you can reduce it.
Yes.
So if we had an immediate need for something and we were able to get enough support behind it, we could potentially propose increasing that tax to do X, Y, and Z. And then once that's fulfilled, we can then reduce that funding.
That's accurate.
Okay.
It's spoken like a co-chair of a yes campaign. Yes. Pete, did you want to?
Is that town meeting approval?
No.
It's a town.
It's the town.
Everything's by the voters. CPA is really governed by the voters. It doesn't exist without the support of the voters, so it has to go to the voters of the town.
Because in essence, what you're doing is voting to tax yourself more, real estate tax.
Right. Pete, did you want to say
well,
something
the
about
only thing, the only thing about, Carolyn, you're concerned about, it's a short time until applications are doing. The master plan is certainly going to identify a lot, but that's probably not for this year. That's for subsequent years. And we have several good-sized projects, recreation projects, that already have done their planning and they're working on design and they're going to be looking for construction money. So, this year we're going to be really challenged in the recreation field to fund. The applications we already know are coming in and they'll come from all over. So it's going to be a real challenge this year.
We should mention, that was 1.6 that we had in Parks and Rec. So some of the projects that have CPA funded was all the new lighting at Guile Field Road is all LED lighting. So that cost our teams thousands of dollars. I'm on the softball executive board, and each team pays their own funding. So CPA funding went in to replace all those fixtures. It was $300,000, and so now it's a much cheaper to light the fields. So that's been a great project. CPA has been a really great vehicle for many projects. So Tom mentioned we also put in an application for dugouts. Those will go in August. Those are going to start in August. There'll be 2 new dugouts for the Babe Ruth, and then there'll be 2 for the softball field. So we're starting to see projects go now, and it's pretty exciting.
And two other open space projects that are in that category, I think Pete's talking about Peverly Park Playground and Wharf Park.
And those are big.
They're big projects.
We have, in some cases, multiple year investment in helping those projects advance. So, and they're not done yet, obviously.
Which the Wharf Park has the Milton's Farmers Market on it now, today. And, you know, anybody who's gone there, there's accessibility challenges and stuff. So that was one project that we looked at planning, right? So that was like planned, and then kind of laid the seeds for that. It's been probably like a year. There was some public process on it. They changed the plans around. Now they have a plan. But now they're going to come back to CPA, I'm sure, and try to look for some of the money, right? I think one thing that we didn't talk about too is it always helps, I think, your applications if you can get some private money or additional sources of funding with an application. It kind of, we look at that favorably.
Yeah, leverage is important.
Is
is important. So let's get other Hal. And then Mike.
Could you give an example of some community housing projects that you funded over the last 3 years?
Yeah, well, Julie Kramer is here. Julie, do you want to talk about that? Julie's not on the Community Preservation Committee, but she is the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, which we have funded almost all of our housing dollars.
3 years in a row.
All of our housing dollars
which is
have
great.
funded the trust.
It's fantastic. And you know, what the trust has done is they've applied for the funding, so it comes into the Affordable Housing Trust. That's pretty common in many towns and cities. And then we provide the grant funding for the properties. So one of the ones that's probably the more significant one is the Winter Valley, which is an elderly senior housing right off of Canton Avenue. No, I'm there too. So, and they are building another entire building. And speaking of leverage, they were able to get from HUD some Section 202 funding, which is a very sacred piece of funding for senior housing. And so they came to the CPA fund first. And then when they realized that we were sort of taking care of the funding for community housing, came to us. So $400,000 will go into that project, and the Section 202 grant is like $20 million. So it was really great leverage. Another
and
project,
that's 36 units of all 100% affordable.
Deeply affordable
for
affordable
seniors.
housing. So like 30% AMI. Folks. And then another one that we had earmarked is the town has issued an RFP, a request for proposal, for the town farm for some housing up there. And so we've got, you know, sort of some funding set aside for that project if it should advance. And the other important thing.
Julie, can I just add on that? Sure. The two RFP responses, one asked for $500,000 from the trust to help build any units there, and the other asked for $1 million. So we were cognizant of the fact that those applicants interested in building affordable housing on that site would need some local subsidy, basically, and I think the RFPs bore that out.
Yep. So it's great that 3 years in a row the Affordable Housing Trust has received funding, because it's also a very strong signal to folks that we will have some funding available for affordable housing, and come to us. And if you've got an idea, housing, a 3-family, a 1, come to us, because it's, the money is there for the use for community housing, and we want to see more here in Milton.
And then Mike Billis had his hand up. So, another person that played a key role in getting it on the ballot in the first place as a select board member.
Thanks. Thanks. I have really a question about a project that is behind you across the street. It's the basketball court and open land back there that I believe is controlled by the select board.
Yes.
And I believe about 1.5 years ago, the town administrator made an application for $75,000 to upgrade the basketball court and the land over there. and I believe it was approved for $40,000 at town meeting last year.
Right.
And I don't know what the status of that is. Is it moving forward? Is it?
Yeah, I can, it was on our agenda.
Oh, great.
I can let you.
On your agenda, meaning the parks?
The parks.
Okay, here, just to keep the committees straight here.
So that, yeah, sure.
So that, I just want to say before, Rob, you answered that was, as usual, Mr. Zulus, that was an accurate description of the initial application was 75, and the funding, we did fund that project at $40,000 level.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we needed.
No.
To apply for more.
Good
No,
question.
So that's the issue. So Nick originally came to the committee for a $75,000 project, right, to redo it. And there was $40,000 that's been earmarked. It's probably on your, like, over a year now that it's been sitting there. It's still earmarked for improvements, but it's just kind of sat there. I
2
did
years,
reach out to Nick Milano
the second
probably
year.
about 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard back
It's still
from him.
safe. Yeah.
So I'm trying to, I mean, there's probably a lot on his plate, but I think we're trying to figure out what we can do. And that is under the control of the select board as well. It's not under the parks. So we need to figure out what to do with that money, or if there's even people that I've heard that people also want to fundraise for it privately so that we can actually do something there with it.
So I guess the question is, I mean, it's too late for this year, so it would be for next year.
It wouldn't be until July 2026 if they wanted to do more.
So should there be, does someone need to make an application for more funding from the CPA for that? And I just don't know, given where it is right now.
Maybe, but then Nick, I would think it would be
Well,
someone from.
when the original application came in, he didn't really have anybody look at it and really put an estimate together. So we went out and looked at it in the existing condition and determined that there were things that they thought they might have to do that they wouldn't. So the thought was that the $40,000 would do it. And so that's why we funded it. Then delays, increase in prices with COVID and all that kind of stuff. It was really last July that money became available, so it hasn't been sitting for years.
Yeah.
But construction costs going up and stuff like that. Recently, the DPW tried to figure out what it would cost, and they said it's close, but the 40 wouldn't do it. Now, they haven't come back and let us know how they were going to fund whatever, 10,000, 15,000 more, whatever they need, and I assume that they're working on it. But certainly one approach would be to come to CPA and see if they could get, some additional funding for that.
So does someone need to do something like to try to put it on?
Well, it would probably be,
I mean, I've tried.
oh yeah, because there's people online.
Yeah. So the question was to redo the basketball court near town hall
And the parkland.
and the parkland too. So Nick Milano applied, the town administrator applied for $75,000 for CPA funding. The committee funded $40,000. And so that money, I believe it's because there's a shortfall there's a shortfall to actually do what he wanted to do originally. So it's kind of sit dormant now. And I was just made aware of this. I'm probably sure you were as well. I mean, I was off the committee for a year. So I'm trying, reach out. We need to keep reaching out to Nick, see what we can do about it and push that forward. I don't like seeing funding locked up.
I think he's asking for the select board, right? 'Cause it's select board.
Yes,
Yes.
he was. It was a application on behalf of the select board. Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
correct.
correct.
Really not
The-
him, it's the select
No.
Right.
Just get some new nets in the intro.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Mike, you just referred to the site conditions too, and I think that's what, to my limited understanding, that's what's driving some of the cost. The site it's a little like the Wharf Park. It's a little uneven. There's basketballs that will roll into the street.
I think it needs to be.
There's a safety issue there.
needs an overlay.
It needs an overlay.
Yeah. The court itself needs upgrade, but I think
Yeah.
the surrounding. The other goal was to have it as a active outdoor resource for the Council on Aging, and have it an intergenerational resource in town, because,
Don't bring that up.
That was the pitch.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Other comments, questions, projects, ideas, dreams?
Anybody online that is wanting to speak? Do we know if anybody's online?
There wasn't when we started the meeting, and the folks from Milton Cable are running the online portion. No, it's gone. Once I close this, it signed me out. They are administering the folks from Milton Cable are administering the feed. So I would assume they would let people in if we
So they're back there. I could ask them if there's anybody online.
Sure.
Careful.
Yeah, Marita.
Once a house, let's say a house is approved.
Rob, can you give Marita the?
Let's say a house is approved, a historic house is approved. How public does it have to be?
That's a great question, and it's a great question for CPA generally, not just the historic portions. So we're generally talking about a public amenity or public asset here in anything we fund. We funded a garden the first year, Spalding Gardens, thank you, which we were proud to fund that, and it's a great historic resource in Milton, but it wasn't the most known public asset in Milton. And so we worked with the applicant to make sure there were publicly days where the public was invited in to. Historic preservation is not my forte. Linda, Kathleen, go ahead. But it can't be somebody's private home, definitely not.
Yes, it can be somebody's private home.
That's not open to the public?
You can do a historic preservation restriction. You do historic preservation restrictions, and those don't necessarily, you preserve the facade, you preserve the outside of the building, you typically don't do the inside. We've done historic preservation money on the outside of churches, not doing the religious stuff, but the Bullfinch, it's designed by Bullfinch. And those are historic preservation restrictions that are approved by the state, and sometimes CPCs will fund those. And there doesn't have a requirement for public access. You are preserving the historic, the building. You're looking, you're not required to have public access to a private house or a private building to do that sort of thing. Yeah.
So Kathleen, would that also, like the churches, I'm more familiar with the churches that have been funded, typically CPA money has been used for the exterior.
Right.
Right. So same concept.
Yes,
Right.
and the
Okay.
historic preservations restrictions are typically on the outside, not on the inside, unless, you had Tiffany windows or something like that.
Which to you, Brian, you can probably do roofing, you can do the exterior shell, so I think in your pricing.
But that's
you
a
have to do
public
that.
building, that's a different situation.
Right.
Yes.
I thought the question was really about private
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
And that's different.
Can you describe what you taught us about easements? When we do preservation projects, you sometimes have an easement.
Right, an easement is a right to, like, for example,
We did a historic preservation project in Plymouth, and it was a Paul Revere bell that's at the top of a church. So we got an easement to allow access to sort of look at the Paul Revere bell if you really wanted to. But in most cases, when you're talking about a historic preservation project with CPA money, you are looking at putting on a restriction that's going to get approved by the state. And so there's not necessarily a public access to that. Unlike open space, which lots of times is going to have for a conservation restriction, is going to have a requirement for public access. So they're really different.
Right, but I'm referring to how you helped us understand that when we fund a project, that you then go back and put these easements or restrictions on it. That's part of the process of what we do.
Yeah.
And it depends on the project.
Right. So, for example, on the Forbes estate, the Forbes property provided money for that.
Right.
But that's already got like 6 historic preservation restrictions on it. So we could get another one, but there's really probably no point. But we did say in talking to them
that we put in the grant agreement that there is a requirement to sort of have that open to the public for certain events. I mean,
Exactly.
like the Spalding Garden, we did the same thing.
Same
Nobody
size.
knows that it's here. We've done that for the yacht club. You know, that hasn't, we voted the funding, but they haven't taken it yet.
Exactly.
But that's
Gonna-
one of the
gonna happen
requirements
by
too,
then.
is that there has to be some
Sometimes.
access to the
Yeah,
public.
no, it is happening.
That's what I was getting after.
Yeah. It's an exciting part of CPA is like, you know, the Forbes House barn project is, as we all know, we funded that, and as that comes online, that's going to be an exciting new resource for the town to use for events, for, you know, meetings, for nonprofit events. You know, Forbes House already works with several nonprofits, but that was part of their application to us. So, Kathleen, Carolyn, what's your name?
So my question to the committee is, how are we promoting the good of CPA funds now that some of these projects are coming to fruition? So certainly people that are here in the room, I think, are very aware of where funding is going and what's to come. I don't know that the general public is completely aware.
I'll answer that.
Pete, go ahead.
You're right. We want to promote more. One of the things we do is we do have a construction sign that when people are doing work out on these, that they, you know, put out there so people see that improvements are funded through this CPA. The other thing is the Milton Times has been very generous with us in terms of writing letters or writing articles about the projects that we're doing. They always list all the projects that we're proposing, you know, that we're proposing for funding at town meeting. So they have done a lot to get it out to the public who reads the Times. Not everybody does, hard to believe. But we're trying to think of how we do better with it. You know, we've got a website. We're talking about asking people who do improvements to install a permanent sign, not just a temporary during construction. But a lot of communities require that there be a permanent recognition at the site that, you know, funded by the citizens of Milton through the Community Preservation Act or something like that. So
It would look great
that's
on the afternoon station.
Absolutely.
happy to do it, right?
You're right, Carolyn. We could do more, and we're gonna continue. The permanent signage is one of the things we're exploring.
To be honest, like social media would be good for our committee to consider.
Yeah, more of that. Obviously, we publicized this, you know, through some social media posts. Julia was good about posting that and everything Milton and Milton neighbors. But we need to do more of that and be consistent and continuous with it. The other thing is, some people or town meeting members may have noticed that we took this out of the consent agenda last year for a specific reason, to publicize this. And I think we should, it's my personal opinion, we should continue to take it out of the consent agenda. I'm sorry, I'm a town meeting member and I like the consent agenda because it helps move things along. But I think this is so new to town. It's still only in our 4th year that I think it's obviously only reaching a certain audience that watches town meeting and is in the room, but it's a good audience to reach. And I think we want continue to want, there's a lot of good news stories that we've been able to fund. And the other thing is, as projects come online, we've talked as a committee, haven't pulled the trigger on this, but talked as a committee about doing some sort of publicity event at one or more of the projects, you know, a press event or a party, or, you know, so there's problems with that. We don't like to expend funds on things, but you know, we should look at creative ways to continue to expose the good work CPA is doing in town. So.
You have any ideas in particular?
I think social media probably is one of your better avenues that is not going to cost much money.
Yep.
Is just, you know, every time a project gets completed, I mean, like the Spalding, gardens,
Yep.
I don't think many people know about that.
Yeah.
I don't even know where it is. And I grew up in town. I live here in town.
When they came to us, we had to ask, it's Fletcher Steel Way.
Fletcher Steel Way.
Yeah.
But even then, you'd have a hard time.
Yeah. I just think, especially now that projects are getting completed,
Yes.
I think it's super, if we want to continue to keep CPA funding alive and, potentially even, down the road increase for some of these bigger projects that we are going to need funding for, I think we really need to let residents know how impactful it is.
Yep.
And I don't know if a marketing person on the committee is a seat that can be open, but it's almost like that might be worth, looking into.
Yeah.
I guess one thing I would say relative to that, I think letting people know more what's going on is great. The town share each year of the 3 years we've funded so far has been like $180,000. So that's $500,000, and we've spent $3.8 million. So, it really does build on that, and I think letting people know that, the little bit that you pay on your real estate tax does multiply in terms of what it's able to do in town, I think is a good point.
And it has grown. So like this last year was $5 million. That had to go back down to $1 million. So we can say it's definitely raised in popularity from the first year.
I think, Tom, your suggestion is a good one. You would only need the moderator's permission to exclude it from the consent agenda.
Yeah.
And I think you shouldn't be prepared to make some comments about it.
Yeah.
It does come up from vote and educate, at least starting with the town meeting members. Hey, this is what we've done, this is what we're doing.
It's also good, frankly, it's great, and I think the most educational thing is the presentation we can make. But it's also, to Carolyn's point, to have a record, since we have recorded votes now, in the first 2 years, I think the first year or two, we only had 1 or 2 no votes against it. So it's winning 240 to 1 or something like that. So that shows that people support this specific list of funded projects, which I think is an important statement for a town meeting to make.
And I just think as a town meeting member, seeing a presentation like that will keep us all awake.
It's a good news. It's one of the few truly good news articles that we can do. Kathleen.
Are you going to post the piece of paper that the presentation you did tonight?
Yeah.
This will be on.
Or present it.
We can.
No, but
I mean,
when we post that on Facebook or something?
Yeah.
so that's some of those slides are going to be in the town meeting presentation we prepare for May. Yeah.
It'll be put on the CPC website.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
suggestion on social media, vivid photography, is so critically important. I mean, I just looked at your website and it describes the process, but not the accomplishments.
Yep.
And all those accomplishments really could be just beautifully, visually represented, with a call to volunteers.
The lights.
Photography, right.
The lights, right?
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I mean, it may. I was just going to whisper to Jenny, but I'll say it out loud. Is it may. Again, we are not expending all of our administrative funds, and to hire a town resident who is a professional photographer, because there is a difference between my definition of vivid photography and a real somebody that knows what they're doing, obviously. Yeah. So.
Not to mention putting it up on the website.
Yeah. Right. So great suggestion. Yep. Wendy.
Thanks, Tom. When our town adopted the CPA, we voted to have an exemption for taxpayers with low and moderate income.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that that's something that needs to be applied for every year.
Yep.
It's a very simple application. It's available on the CPC website. And the deadline is April 1st.
The town assessor's website has it as well.
And the town assessor's website as well.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yep. Yes, no, that's a great point. Let's talk about, while we're on exemptions, so there's one exemption that's blanket. That's 100,000. The first 100,000 of assessed value, residential and commercial, I believe, if my memory serves, but definitely on residential, is exempt. So if you have a house assessed at $1 million, The CPA surcharge is really only on 900,000 of it. So that is a blanket surcharge that towns can adopt or not adopt, but Milton did adopt that. So the first 100,000 of the property. There is, I think, some interest among the statewide coalition to address, that's 25 years old, and maybe that should be updated to be 200,000 or something like that. So, but for now, everybody gets, every residential taxpayer gets 100,000 exempt from the surcharge, and then the low mod exemption, which is different because it has to be applied for. But that's a great reminder, and that, what'd you say, April 1st is the?
April 1st.
Thank you.
Coming up quick.
To apply for that exemption, yes. And I think I figured out recently for, again, a presentation for town meeting, but the average surcharge for the average home in Milton, or the surcharge for the average home in Milton is, CPA surcharge is about $102 in FY25. So.
Let's double
So. Other comments, questions? This has been great. Thank you. I think everybody that walked in the room spoke. Anybody else want to have a second chance at it? But if not, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
We're
It's a
adjourned.
small
Thank you very
group, but we
much.
had some good discussion.
Thank you.
3, 2, 1. Here we go!